Here we are back with your letters, and next steps are to add some shapes around it. And you'll notice that I did some simple squares and stars and triangles. But what do you notice about my perspective lines? Are they all the same? Different? What do you notice? What's closest to us? What's further away? All that's determined by the vanishing point. So you'll notice that the triangle shapes that are closest to the bottom appear as if they're closer to us because we see them in front of the letters. And then the letters are popping out at us, and these feel like they're past the letters, beyond them in space, because they're behind, the perspective bars are behind that. And you'll see that I allowed my perspective lines to go all the way to the vanishing point. I did not end them, whereas the stars, I did end them, so they look more like they're floating forms. How you design it is up to you. I just suggest that you be thoughtful in placement. Perhaps start with something in the middle and then work your way out. For shapes, if you have, perhaps if you're doing the word love, maybe you want to mix in some hearts with that. Totally up to you. You also, if you're going to use geometric shapes, you're going to want to use a straight edge to draw them. And if you're doing free form shapes, just be careful that you're neat and thoughtful about how you do that. So I'm going to start with just putting a square at the top here, and just like my sample, and I'm using that business card again because it's allowing me to create a square with right angles. So add your shapes and start from the middle and work your way out. I have 5 shapes at the top, which allows for me to think about what kind of color scheme I'm going to do, so I can create a pattern. I do recommend, if you're going to do a pattern, to use an odd number of shapes. So for example here, these are all the same color, so it really doesn't matter how many I used. But up here, think about what would happen if I had an even number. Here's an odd number, so I have blue, green, blue, green, blue. So there's a blue on the outside on each side, and then the blue in the middle. So if I had an even number, I couldn't do that if I wanted to create an alternating pattern of color for my color scheme. So definitely think about how you want the final to look like. It requires some thought processing before it's finished. Kind of visualize what it's going to look like. So add some shapes. Notice how big they are in relationship to the letters. They are probably 1/3 of the size, so I wouldn't get any bigger than that. Otherwise, your letters won't be the focal point, and that's what we want. We want the letters to be the focal point. And you guys remember what focal point is in art. It's what stands out, where your eye goes first. So even though there's a lot of other things going on, we want to have the viewer see the letters first and then see the other supporting elements. So those are my top shapes, and now I'm going to do the bottom. I'm going to add some triangles, and again I'm going to make sure that the size of them aren't too big, and I want them because I want to have enough room for these perspective lines. That's what's creating this dynamic look that creates the illusion of space, allowing enough of a shape to fill in with dark to medium light colors. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, it's an odd number, so if I did want to do an alternating pattern, I could. I also noticed that they're not in any particular arrangement as far as alignment across this way. So if I would use my rule to line up, you can see that these kind of go up, this one comes down. So if you want to just do random shapes, it's totally fine. It will still look good. I think the most important part is that your letters look even. So I'm going to use, again, a straight edge to create the triangles. And these triangles look like they're equilateral triangles, meaning all three sides are about the same. How you draw is up to you. If you want to use some of those crazy shapes from the packet, you can use that. If you're having a hard time thinking of shapes, you can do circles. And remember, if you do a circle, find something to trace. So perhaps your pencil sharpener is small enough that you can trace your bottom of your pencil sharpener, or maybe a small spool of thread, kind of like those travel size little mini thread spools could be a good thing to trace. A small cap from a water bottle. Whatever you have around the house. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could add another one in there. I'm going to leave it out just in case I do decide to do a pattern. So at this point, I will stop, and next step would be to add the perspective lines. So finish up your shapes, clean up any unwanted pencil lines you don't need, and we'll meet back here for next step for adding perspective lines.